So, I had to do an action research project for my graduate studies at PFW, and we have to do a project in which we kind of set up what the experiment's going to look like and what the research will look like this half of the year. Then the next half of the year I actually implement it and I get the actual data for it. So what I'm doing is teacher-directed instruction or student-directed instruction. Now, I'm not saying it should be one or the other. I want to be clear on that. But what I am saying is that I feel like there's been much of an emphasis, not only in this district, but across the nation, about student-directed independent learning. So what I mean by that is teacher-directed is, I stand up here, you guys are active. Meaningful and purposeful, not just checking off a box to say, well, this is what they want me to do, so that's what I do. All right. Also, I feel like I want to have more diverse instruction to where students don't have to rely on an iPad or a teaching assistant to tell them all the answers. If you make it more diverse, maybe through teacher-centered and student-centered combined, then maybe they can get more out of it. But that's what I also want to try and research and figure out. Okay. So here's what our school, I've noticed that we need through our data, through QIT meetings, through whatever, through meetings with Mr. Jones also. Obviously we're not meeting the bar in all the subjects of our target goal, English, math, science, social studies, whatever. We also have a lot of student discipline issues, and most of them happen inside the classroom. The data proves that most disruptions and referrals happen in the classroom. So what I'm trying to suggest is that maybe more teacher-directed instruction could possibly limit those in-class disruptions and also maybe bring in more student achievement if they're more engaged that way. Okay, so my areas of focus are basically, this is going to be through 9 weeks. I'm going to collect data through 5 different tests that each class will take. I'll get through the methodology of how this is done in a minute. But basically, I'm going to measure student achievement and also discipline through tests, and then also classroom observation and referral counts. Okay, the purpose of why I'm doing this is because I feel like our school has a lot of unique dynamics to it. We have a lot of diverse students, okay, in terms of their learning levels, in terms of their ethnicity, in terms of their languages that they speak. We have a variety of different kids. And so what I want to try and show, or try and maybe research, is that if you combine teacher-directed instruction with student-directed instruction, you can boost the achievement of all those students and all those subgroups. All right, so my research questions are this. Does more teacher-directed instruction contribute to higher scores on assessments than student-directed instruction? And does more teacher-directed instruction contribute to less disciplinary interventions in the classroom than student-directed instruction? My hypothesis is that yes, teacher-directed instruction will contribute to higher scores on assessments than student-directed instruction. I also think that more teacher-directed instruction will probably limit the disciplinary issues and classroom disruptions and things of that nature. So here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to have 2 classes that I experiment with out of my 6, 3rd period and 6th period. One of those classes, the reason why I chose those classes is because they're identical in the amount of SPED kids they have, ELL, and also disciplinary kids that usually have issues in the class. They're both larger classes too. That's another reason why I think teacher-directed instruction could be more beneficial, because these larger classes, when we break up into groups and we do our independent problem-based learning, it gets a little chaotic, disruptions arise, conflicts arise, because it's just a larger setting and more kind of chaotic setting, depending on how you structure your class. I'm sure it varies from teacher. Teacher-centered instruction will include videos, lecture, image analysis, whole group reading, elbow partners, etc. Student-directed class instruction will be me laying out the lesson, providing context, and then they all kind of disperse and they do their own research and they discover their own learning. I will monitor that student-led instruction group, just like I always do, and facilitate and make sure they're working and doing what they need to do. Teacher-directed, though, will be much more of me having ownership of the class. So also, data will be taken from 5 different tests that they're going to take through the course of those 9 weeks. Basically, 2 days out of the week. I'm not going to do this every day. So on, let's say, Tuesday and Thursday, third period we'll get a student-based or student-independent-led lesson, and then sixth period we'll get a teacher-centered lesson. That'll happen 2 days a week, and they'll cover the same standards. So when I take that test, or when I give out that test and they take it, I'll measure to see who's thriving with those standards more. That's not going to be the whole test, just over those certain standards that their lesson covered. And then I'll also look at grades. I think that grades will be better. My hypothesis is that more teacher-centered instruction, students will turn in more things. When I let them go off on their own, I don't know how it is in other classes, but to my experience, with student independent-led instruction, a lot of students don't turn in their work. They just kind of blow it off. Also, I'll keep data over ELL, SPED, low SES students, and disciplinary students. So I'll keep sub-data over them on how they progress. So that's pretty much where I'm at. That's the design of the lesson. That's the design of the research. I think it's kind of clear. Now I'm ready for you guys to hammer me with questions. Let me have it, because I know some of you are looking at me like this just doesn't seem right.
What you got? My initial question or thought is, so you said third period and sixth period.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is going to be your student-centered and which one's going to be your teacher-directed?
I haven't decided yet, but I want to do the teacher-centered with the class that's less motivated, less engaged, to truly see if that makes a difference. So the better class, I think, is probably sixth period. I'm going to let them do the student-based independent research because I feel like they can handle it more, because I don't want to make the research biased and give it to the third period kids who probably won't be able to handle it on their own and probably will prove my hypothesis right. So I'm trying to prove my hypothesis wrong. I'm going to make sixth period student research or independently led, and then third period, which is my more challenging class, will be the teacher directed.
Okay, without looking at the master schedule, do you have parapros in both those classes?
I do.
Okay, so will your research be supported by, if maybe in your teacher directed, whether it's you giving that direction or like a small group with the parapro, is there a way to monitor that?
That's a good question. I do plan with the teacher directed to still have my parapro involved, probably sitting next to maybe 1 or 2 students instead of them having a group by themselves. So yeah, the teacher that will be in the student independently led group, they will be much more hands-on. So yeah, that's something to consider as well. Thank you. Anybody else?
Are they're given the same assessments?
Yes, they'll get the exact same assessment when I test them, but it's over the same standards that were covered. So sixth period, we'll say they're the student independent directed, got to think of a better word, student directed lesson, right? They'll kind of be, I don't know, they'll be monitored by me, but I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? What was your question again?
Are the assessments are the same?
Yeah, so their assessment will be the same. So like they'll be over the same 2 standards that I give the teacher-directed assessment to in third period. So we're talking about the same things. They're learning about the same things. The presentation of which they get it is different.
So for clarification, so if you're doing student-centered learning, so you might give like a whole group lesson and then let them work with partners or whatever, like going through like.
Somewhat, yeah, but it's not going to be as I guess maybe with an elbow partner at most.
Something
It's
like
not,
that.
They're not going to break into groups.
So like in a teacher-centered, you're thinking more like PowerPoints, direct instruction.
Direct instruction, PowerPoint, video,
Okay.
lecture, also, you know, looking at images and then reading together, just doing pretty much everything where it's a whole class environment, and it's kind of, I hate to say I'm in control of it, but that's kind of what it is. I'll be more in control and more hands-on in that
So
group.
in the student-centered, you're